I've come to Fort Harrod to find about the history of what's considered the first fort in Kentucky. And it was established in 1774, just 8 months before Boonesboro was established, making it the first one. And by 1777, there were 300 people living behind the fort. This was used to defend the settlers in the area. This fort was originally constructed by 33 men that came here with Captain Harrod, and they came down the rivers and then went inland a little while because they wanted to build a fort in a place that was safe and they could defend themselves against the local Indian tribes. All right, when you enter Fort Harrod, you'll pay your admission and then enter the fort here. And the office that is here was not part of the original fort. This is for administrative purposes now. All right, the first blockhouse you come to is James Harrod's blockhouse. Now, James Harrod is the person that the fort is named after. And he's the one that brought the settlers into this area. This building is now used as
State Park,
the gunsmith shop.
Old Fort Harrod State Park commemorates the first permanent European settlement west of the Alleghenies. In March of 1774, Captain James Harrod and about 32 determined, brave men left Pennsylvania and set out for Kentucky.
Now, as you walk around the side of the fort after leaving James Harrod's blockhouse, you'll see the fort wall. In my time here, I've talked to several of the park rangers who are interpreting the history of the fort, and I found out that this fort that they've reconstructed here is only 2/3 the size of the original fort, and that drawings of the original fort still exist. Now, in this corner of the fort, they have what they say is Kentucky river cane, although to me it looks a lot like bamboo. Now, one of the reasons this fort was successful is the fact that they built the fort around a spring. Therefore, they always had water. And if there was a fire, they could put out the fire with the water from the spring. And here they have a recreation of the spring that was in the fort. Now, continuing on in the fort, we come first to the powder magazine. And the powder magazine, they made it look like a root cellar. This is where they would have stored the gunpowder. And in 1777, they made a powder run to Virginia to get more powder for this fort. And here we have the blacksmith shop, and he's working on various projects that they need at the fort. Now, once you pass the blacksmith shop, then you come to McGinty's Ordinary. This blockhouse has been set up like an inn. And you can see the table set up for visitors. All right, they even have one room in the Ordinary where they do weaving demonstrations. And you need to talk to this lady here when you come. She's very knowledgeable. Then going up the stairs, Now, these stairs would not have originally been in this blockhouse. They would have had a ladder to get up here. And up here, they have a recreation of the beds. And then they have a display of the settlers. Now, I've been told that once they established this fort in 1774, just 3 years later, they had 300 people living behind the fort. Now, coming out of the ordinary, you come to the next cabin, and when you come here, they'll have a list of what each cabin represents. Inside the cabins, you have a nice representation of items from the time period, even a nice bed in here, a rope bed, and below it, another bed that you can pull out, or trundle bed, I believe they call it. All right, once you leave cabin 5, we're going to pass the cabin building that they use for the restrooms. And then the next one is used by the employees, so we can't go in there. Number 8 is William Pogue's cabin, and he was the handyman of the fort. And you'd see reproductions and original tools that they would have used around the fort that he may have fixed. Also, what's interesting in this cabin is that the story is he produced or built the first plows that would till the bluegrass of Kentucky at this fort. All right, cabin number 9 is the Byron Station cabin, and this shows some more items from the fort and talks about the story of the brave women on the frontier. After this, you can go into the recreation of the first schoolhouse in Kentucky. This is where the settlers would have sent their children to learn. And the interesting story about this first schoolhouse is that between the logs, they did not fill it in because they felt that the fresh air was good for the children. Now we come to cabin number 11 in the fort, and this is a cabin dedicated to the earliest settlers. And once again, you have typical items that you would find at the first fort. This is George Rogers Clark blockhouse. He was one of the leaders of the settlements in Kentucky. He would later go to explore and claim the Northwest Territory towards modern-day Ohio. And you can go up the stairs here too. The original blockhouse would not have had stairs like this, but a ladder. They have some maps on the wall of the different territories and things in the area, because this fort was just one fort in what later became a system of forts. Now, the holes you see in the walls were for firing your musket out the window or your rifle. Now, the one thing about most original blockhouses they don't have here is if you look down at the floor here, this part of the floor actually overhangs outside of the fort, and they'd have had holes in the floor to shoot your rifle or musket down at people trying to get in. Now, this is a recreation of the firing platforms that you would have had all along the walls of the fort that you could have come up to and fired over the wall at anyone trying to get into the fort. Now, in the center of this fort, they also have an animal pen that you can see a couple of animals here. They look like goats to me. Also, with your ticket at the fort, there is a mansion museum here, and it's included in your ticket price, but they will not allow any photography in the building. So just go inside and look around. When you get here, they have guns, they have a Lincoln room, they have a Confederate room, and they have a lot of Indian artifacts in there too. So it's a very interesting place. I highly recommend it. Now, inside this chapel in here is the Lincoln Marriage Chapel, or the Lincoln Marriage Cabin. This is the cabin where Abraham Lincoln's parents were married, and now they've brought it to this state park so that you can see the original cabin. So let's go inside and take a look. So this is the original cabin where Abraham Lincoln's parents were married. That's been moved inside this chapel. And here's a plaque on the wall about the marriage cabin. It's pretty amazing that they moved this cabin inside of a chapel building. Okay. This is hard to believe that they've moved the cabin where Abraham Lincoln's parents got married into a chapel here and just built it up around this tiny structure. Well, I hope you enjoyed this visit to Fort Harrod. This is part of American history that we almost never hear about. We hear about Daniel Boone, but not about Captain Harrod. So, until next time, see ya.